self-improvement is slave morality. Now, I'm not saying the thing of like, oh, well, you have to look beyond self-improvement, aka the name of this channel, or all self-improvement is pointless. Obviously, I believe that, but that's not the point of this. Because when you hear slave morality, you probably think, oh, bad, terrible, not a good thing, should be avoided at all costs. I'm not making that claim here at all. In fact, Nietzsche himself did not make that claim. A lot of us just think, we hear slave morality versus master morality, or slave morality versus higher morality, or herd morality versus higher morality, I should say. You automatically think herd morality should be avoided, slave morality should be avoided. That's not necessarily true. What Nietzsche claims in both Beyond Good and Evil and Genealogy of Morals is that herd morality, slave morality, is innately part of human nature. We all have it. It's unavoidable. We are the product, our culture, and genetically, you could even argue, of slave morality winning out in the West. That's encapsulated within Christianity, but it's so inherently a part of our culture and who we are that it's unavoidable, all right? And it's not necessarily a bad thing or a weak thing, because slave morality won out in Europe. Slave morality beat master morality to become the prevailing morality. And so could it all inherently be this weak, terrible thing? I don't think so. And again, Nietzsche doesn't inherently think so either, although he does mostly have contempt for slave morality. But he also believes that slave morality allows for the existence of the philosopher, which he himself is. Very weird, I know, but this is going to make sense in a second, I hope, at least if I explain it correctly. So he tells on himself here, or he kind of reveals what I'm talking about at the beginning of part 9 of Beyond Good and Evil, called What is Noble? So I'm going to read the first paragraph, okay? He says, every enhancement of the type man has so far been the work of an aristocratic society, and it will be so again and again. A society that believes in the long ladder of an order of rank and differences in value between man and man, and that needs slavery in some sense or other. Without the pathos of distance which grows out of the ingrained difference between strata, when the ruling caste constantly looks afar and looks down upon subjects and instruments, and just as constantly practices obedience and command, keeping down and keeping at a distance, that other more mysterious pathos could not have grown up either. This part's very important. The craving for an ever new widening of distances within the soul itself, the development of an ever higher, rarer, more remote, further stretching, more comprehensive states. In brief, simply the enhancement of the type man, the continual self-overcoming of man, to use a moral formula in a super moral sense. So what is he saying there? Basically what he's saying is that the soul deepening is only possible because of slave morality. That yes, the initial pathos of distance of the aristocrats, the top of the society, and the lower class, the difference between those two inevitably led to slave morality sort of developing itself to the point where it can beat master morality in a way. And so if this doesn't make any sense, I'm going to explain it to you now for it to make sense. So one thing that we should talk about, which is I think is really relevant here, he talks about this in another portion of his work, the origin of memory. He believes that memory was developed by more slave-minded people in order to remember the debts that they owe to their masters. And so in a Nietzschean worldview, the masters, the aristocrats, the noblemen, whatever you want to call it, they're actually very simple-minded. They're not necessarily stupid, but they aren't super sophisticated in a way, in the same way that a slave morality-driven person, more specifically the priest figure, which I'll talk about in a second, is. And so basically they're just like, well, we're the masters, we're in charge, we were born into nobility, we're strong, we're big, we know how to fight, we have the best trainers, so we're inherently good. And so with them, the kind of thinking in a Nietzschean worldview is that they didn't need to introspect a lot. They already thought they were the shit. They actually could see other people externally being like, well, these are slaves, the common people, the common people lie a lot. That's something that Nietzsche talks about somewhere else in Beyond Good and Evil, that he believed that the aristocrats always looked down with contempt on the commoners because they thought they always lied. We noblemen are the truthful ones. We're the good ones. The nobles weren't necessarily superficial. They were actually quite deep, but they weren't very, again, sophisticated, because they didn't need to deepen their spirit, because they were so life-affirming already, just by virtue of being in power. They didn't really need to do like deep internal looks into themselves in order to self-overcome and become better. Whereas, from a Nietzschean view, the priest figure, who's part of the noble class, did have to do that thing where they actually had to turn cruelty inward toward themselves to find deeper parts of themselves, to become a better version of themselves. And this better version ended up being smart enough, shrewd enough, to actually manipulate the herd against the nobles in order to gain power. And then also in that process, have the nobles start venerating and revering the priest himself as well. And although it seems pretty clear Nietzsche's implying that the priest is part of the noble class and not part of the herd, also what he's kind of saying is that there needed to be some sort of resentment, some sort of like, oh, you're more powerful than me, and I need to become better in order to be able to beat you. I need to introspect, I need to meditate, I need to turn my cruelty inward. That is inherently a slave-based morality. And Nietzsche's philosophy is all about self-overcoming, right? He literally implies there that self-overcoming, a deepening of the spirit, is in opposition to the original master morality. So doesn't that mean then that self-improvement, which is cruelty turned inward to become a better version of yourself, self-overcoming, that's slave morality? I know it's like a really radical way of thinking, because when you just hear slave morality, you think bad, should be avoided at all costs. But like all things Nietzsche, it's more complicated than that. And so to put it in a more modern, practical context, like I said at the beginning of the video, we are the descendants of slave morality. Slave morality has won, right? However, master morality is the more natural way of things. So master morality can never really go away. There's always going to be natural orders of rank. We are always going to act. There's always going to be people in power who just act the way that they want to act without feeling guilty, right? Without having to appeal to that herd morality, slave morality, in order to check themselves. And so these things are constantly battling against each other within our world, but then also within the actual human spirit, which he also talks about as well, within one person. And then this sort of battle, this antagonism, actually helps to develop the spirit more and more, largely driven by slave morality, because again, master morality was the original morality. Until there's conflict with a slave, or there's conflict where two people want the same thing, slave morality can't exist. Slave morality comes about as a result of not being able to get what the masters have. It's basically a cope. But this cope morality combined with this master morality within the same person deepens the spirit, helps people become more refined, helps people to become more smart, and then it can actually lead to a better self-overcoming and lead to the next iteration or the next generation of human beings, the Übermensch, as Nietzsche would call it, the next step of humanity. The Übermensch is not possible if there's only master morality and there's no slave morality. The Übermensch is somebody who transcends both of those moralities within him to create something new, to create something better, to move all of humanity forward, a brand new transvaluation of values. Meaning, there's originally the master morality, then values got transvalued with slave morality, and then now there's a new morality that is going to transvaluate both of these things for something new. Because self-overcoming won't be possible unless slave morality existed, it makes sense to say that self-improvement is slave morality. And more importantly, it's not something to be ashamed of. It's just part of who we are. No matter how cool you think you are, or how much of a badass you are, you still have slave morality within you. I do too. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but it is something to be aware of. Make sure that you don't be too slave-like, where you start to self-deny and be so cruel to yourself to try to become better and better, and you're doing that just in spite of the masters, rather than actually using that master morality framework of, well, I'm going to use self-improvement to become great and have a great life, and not only be fueled by resentment and to try to beat people who I think are better than me. In essence, don't try to do just self-improvement out of the place of insecurity. A little bit of insecurity is okay, but don't let that be the only driving force. Make sure that you have a bigger reason, a bigger why for trying to become better, and not just try to become better for the sake of competing in the rat race. I hope this video made sense. It might sound a little bit counterintuitive. I can go more in depth on this topic in the future. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you haven't already, go follow me on Instagram. On Instagram, I post separate short videos talking about the types of topics that we're talking about here. I might even expand my thoughts on some videos as well. And I don't post that stuff on YouTube because I just don't really want to post YouTube shorts. I don't think it's actually good for the growth of new channels like myself. So I put that type of content on Instagram. So go ahead and follow me there. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Let me know your opinions in the comment section below. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.